Welcome back to another wonderful week of Shabbos Covenant Oneg. We have a fantastic guest, which we're going to get to shortly. But first, I'd like to open up with a nice short vart from the Chachmei HaMusar. It's a famous Rambam that we know, that the Rambam Maimonides mentions that a person's supposed to pick the Midah Mamutza, which means the middle ground. One shouldn't be extremely angry, and one shouldn't be extremely passive. You should pick the middle ground. And the Rambam delineates different traits that a person's supposed to do that as well. So honestly, until seeing this explanation that I appreciate very much, I always thought that meant that a person should be the balance. You should be hanging in the balance. According to some, though, and it seems to be that this might actually be a very popular approach, it doesn't mean that one should be in the middle and just balance both ends. What it means is that one should have access to both ends of the spectrum. That means that there is a time for one to get angry, perhaps. If a child is about to run into the street, or touch a plug or something like that, there's a time to express that emotion or let that out. That way it helps control the situation. Conversely, there are times to make ourselves completely passive and let things slide. Someone embarrasses you in public, don't respond, let it go. There are some times that you should be extremely generous. That's when people need help and you're able to give. Sometimes you should not be generous. If you have someone that you know is going to abuse the gift that you're going to give them. A child wants candy late at night. You're not being generous by giving it to them. You're actually doing more harm than good. So it's an interesting new perspective on the Rambam and others that speak of this, that the being involved in the middle trait, the middle character trait, doesn't mean standing in the middle. What it means is being able to be flexible, that you use both sides of the spectrum as needed. And they put this into this week's Parsha. It says in the Pasuk, V'shamru derech Hashem la'asos tzedakah mishpat, that Abraham Hashem uniquely calls him out and saying that you are able to preserve tzedakah and mishpat. Now, if one thinks about it, tzedakah and mishpat are two completely opposite ends of the spectrum. Mishpat means judgment, strict letter of the law, and tzedakah is doing beyond that which one necessarily deserves. So these should appear contradictory, but we see that with regards to Abraham and other aspects, it's not a contradiction. These are really two ends of a continuum, two ends of a line, let's say, and a person's supposed to stand in the middle. And you recognize that both sides are things that one has access to and that one can utilize to better serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, moving on from there, I just want to open up with something very interesting that we see in the Parsha. And this is, we call it a diuk. It's an inference that I made. I don't know if anyone else says this, but I found it fascinating. I made this a couple of years ago. And that is as follows. It says when Avram Avinu sees the Malachim, it says, Vayar, he sees the Malachim coming towards him, Vayar, Vayaratz, Likrasa, Mipesach Ha'ol, Vayishtachu Arza. So, if we translate it, it says that he saw them and he ran. So, if you were acting this out, you see something and you want to act upon it, first you have to get up. So I just found it interesting because the pasuk seems to imply that for Avram, and this is someone that's 3 days post-surgery, right? 3 days post his Mila, he didn't even have a moment to stand up. He saw it and he just ran. He burst into a sprint. So this is a powerful midah and something that we could really inculcate in ourselves. That when you see there's something that needs to get done, whether it's a chesed, whether it's whatever it may be that someone else needs help with, whether it's in your family, someone in your community, says have this midah of you see the need and you just run. You don't even take a moment. You don't take the pause to put it together. You're just in full sprint, and it's an incredible midah. And the Gemara in Yevamah says that 3 midos of Klal Yisrael by Shanim Rachonim Gomlei Chasadim, Gmilas Chesed comes from Amar Avinu. This element that we're ready to just burst into a full sprint from a seat without any hesitation whatsoever is an incredibly powerful midah of Klal Yisrael, and we're familiar with many chesed organizations that are constantly doing and achieving. And with that, I'd like to welcome our guest. It's a fine person, Josh Spiegel. I met him in Cancun a couple of years ago. I was working in the day camp on a Pesach program, running the day camp, and he was involved in guest relations and decor and whatever else. Anyone who's ever had anything to do with him or been to one of his events knows that he puts his whole heart into it. He really represents this midah of just going beyond and making people feel comfortable, and it's a really beautiful and special thing, and he's perfectly suited for the job that he does. And without any further ado, I welcome Josh Spiegel to Shabbos Covenant Oneg. Have a good Shabbos.
Hey guys, I'm Josh Spiegel, creative director at Birch Event Design. Some of you may know me from seeing me at Simcha, some of you may know me from Instagram, and some of you may not know us at all. We are an event design and production company that designs events all over the country and beyond. And I want to thank Maishi for having me here today discussing and being a part of this week's Parsha, which really does show a lot about Hachnasas Orchim, a little bit about hospitality, how much the validation and the love that goes into doing what you do for others. In this week's Parsha, Avram Avinu shows a strong desire to host guests even in the hardest of times, regardless of their state, regardless of how important they may be, regardless of who they were. He just put all of himself into his guests. He put them before anybody. And I could really share in that, in what we do at Birch and in our industry in general. We are fortunate enough to give so much of ourselves. We put every single ounce of ourselves into a simcha for other people. We truly treat each event as if it was the only one that matters. It is a responsibility that we think is huge, and we're grateful to be able to do it. One of the biggest, probably the proudest moments that we get from our clients is when they text us or call us afterwards explaining to us how much we've done for them, how much we changed their lives or enhanced their lives and enhanced that one day, and how much it meant to them and how much we will be ingrained in that moment for the rest of their life. It is by far the most validating feeling, and it's one of the major drives for us. It's a part of our DNA, is it being about you, not necessarily being about us, despite what we may be going through in our lives, despite what kind of mood we may be in, despite, everything that's happening around us. In that moment, it's all about you, it's all about our guests, and it's all about our guests enhancing their experience for their guests. And it's a gift that just keeps giving, and we're so fortunate to be in that situation. Maishi, thank you for having me, and have a great Shabbos, everyone.